This is being done in our culture not by philosophers and theologians, because in our culture, the philosophers and the theologians aren't the high priests. In our culture, it's the doctors and the scientists. And the argument here that's being made is that someone's sex is determined by their internal feelings, that sex is determined by how you identify, that sex isn't a bodily reality, but it's merely an internal identity. And now this is an interesting claim, because a claim about who someone is in our culture is much more powerful than a claim about how someone identifies. So a decade ago, you could find many activists saying that a transgender person is a man who identifies as a woman, or a woman who identifies as a man. The claim now is that a trans woman is a woman. No longer that he identifies as a woman, but that she is a woman. Right? They're going to demand that you use the new pronoun and that you affirm that the new identity determines the reality. Okay, this is being done in our culture not by philosophers and theologians, because in our culture, the philosophers and the theologians aren't the high priests. In our culture, it's the doctors and the scientists. So this first slide, there we go. From a medical perspective, the appropriate determinant of sex is gender identity. It is counter to medical science to use chromosomes, hormones, internal reproductive organs, external genitalia, or secondary sex characteristics to override gender identity for purposes of classifying someone as male or female. This quote was made by Dr. Deanna Atkins. She's a professor at Duke School of Medicine. She's the director of the Adolescent Gender Care Clinic at Duke. And this is just a remarkable claim, because just a generation ago, we were told that sex and gender were two different realities, that sex was merely physical and gender was a social construct. Now this was an expert declaration in a federal court case where Dr. Atkins says that your gender identity determines your sex, and that this is from the scientific perspective, from the medical perspective. Likewise, when all of you go through your biology classes, I imagine some of you are taking those as we speak, some of you have already completed them, you'll learn that the bread and butter of biological science are things like chromosomes, hormones, internal reproductive organs, external genitalia, and secondary sex characteristics. That's how scientists identify the male and the female of the species across mammalian species. Those are the things that scientists look for. And so why is it now counter to medical science to point to all of these aspects of objective reality if they conflict with someone's subjective identity? Right? This isn't a scientific claim. This isn't a medical claim. It's a metaphysical claim. It's a philosophical claim, but it's being dressed up in medical garb. Because again, the high priests in our culture aren't actual priests. It's the doctors and the scientists. This isn't just happening in courtrooms. This is also increasingly happening in classrooms. Some of you are probably young enough that you've seen this graphic before, although it depends where you went to school for grade school. But this is the Genderbread Person, version 3.3. And you will see that this is the most up-to-date Genderbread Person. And what it claims is that we have these 5 different aspects of our identity, that they exist along spectra. That's why you see all of these arrows. Even biological sex exists along a spectrum, according to this. And then the 4 boxes are just, the fine print would say, 4 of infinite possibilities. So you have gender identity, gender expression, biological sex, and then sexual attraction and romantic attraction. And you as a young person have to decide where do you fall along all 5 of these spectra. Now, the Genderbread Person got in trouble for supporting the patriarchy. The criticism was that this looks like a man. It looks like a gingerbread man. And so they have a new graphic because they can't use this any longer in kindergartens and grade schools. They use this new graphic, the gender unicorn, which is, an oddly appropriate graphic to use a mythical creature to embody your worldview. I mean, there's probably a Freudian slip going on there. But you'll also notice that it's now sex assigned at birth, right? So the 2 changes from the Genderbread Person to the gender unicorn is that we went from a typical body shape for a human male, gingerbread person, to kind of a mythical body shape of a unicorn. But then also we no longer have biological sex. The new politically correct term is sex assigned at birth. Now, some of you, when you saw this, you kind of chuckled, right? Thinking, how ridiculous is this graphic? This graphic isn't meant to persuade you. This graphic is meant to persuade your younger brothers and sisters. This graphic is meant to persuade your future children that they could come to believe that their sex was merely assigned at birth, and therefore, if their gender identity and their gender expression doesn't line up with the sex that was assigned at birth, a doctor could reassign their sex now. Right? This is meant to capture the moral imagination, not of yourselves, but of your younger siblings. Right? This is being used. Who does this look like? It looks like Barney. Right? This looks like Barney, and they do that intentionally because that's who they're trying to appeal to. Now imagine two otherwise similarly situated young people, two, let's say 5-year-old boys who feel discomfort with their body. One who believes that they're created male or female by an all-loving, all-powerful God, and that if there's a problem with how they're feeling, the solution is to help them align their feelings with reality. The other who has been catechized with the gender unicorn to believe that their real gender identity is something that's in their head, that their sex was merely assigned at birth, and that if they're experiencing a conflict, the solution lies with hormones and surgery, because modern medicine can reassign sex. More importantly, though, is what will their parents be told when the parents take the child to the Duke Center for Gender Care and the expert doctor says, oh yes, the right solution here is going to be puberty-blocking drugs and cross-sex hormones. So that's the worldview. Let me say a little bit, I'll just read you this one slide and then we'll move on. But they say biological sex is an ambiguous word that has no scale and no meaning. Besides it, it's related to some sex characteristics. It's also harmful to trans people. Instead, we prefer sex assigned at birth, which provides a more accurate description of what biological sex may be trying to communicate. Right? I mean, that's the ideological worldview behind this. And then they point out that peer-reviewed research demonstrates that pre-pubertal children, so a child before going through puberty, we're talking single digits age, asserting a different gender identity from the one they were, quote, assigned at birth, are cognitively capable enough to be aware of the gender they are asserting. So just think about that, what that would mean for your younger brothers and sisters, right? Your 5-year-old brother or sister is cognitively capable enough to know that he's actually a girl trapped in a boy's body, and that therefore he should be prevented from going through puberty, he should be placed on cross-sex hormones, et cetera, et cetera.